So, Nate, it's great to get a chance to reconnect with you. I know we talked recently. First, we were sort of interacting via social media in response to a post I had done about third-party warranties, and then we got on the phone. And what I'm excited about with this conversation is we were both talking about a problem in education technology. We don't exactly have the exact same solution to a problem, but we did agree that there may be some bad ways to solve this problem, right? Would you say that that's a good way to characterize what our recent connection?
Yep, that's a perfect way to characterize it. There's definitely solutions out there that don't have the school's best interests at heart or the district's best interests at heart. And I
Right.
think that's what I appreciate about you so much, Charlie, is I think we both have been around this a long time and we both have the school district's best interests at heart.
Yeah. Yeah. And where I kind of came up through a lot of endpoint device sales, which has led to Advent Tech. You have an extensive background in the repair business. Why don't you talk for a minute about Secure Tech Solutions? Just what do you do?
Sure. Yeah, so Secure Tech Solutions started out a little over 5 years ago now. We started out as an iPad repair company that happened to sell cases, that happened to do buybacks, that happened to do lots of different things. We kind of started to blend all that together. And now we've got full holistic solution all the way from the device at the beginning of life. So selling the new Chromebook all the way through the recycling at the end of life, including buybacks in the iTad space as well.
Nice. Very cool. Yeah, and I appreciate, for all intents and purposes, we're more or less competitors in the space, right? Because I'm sure there's ways for us to partner, right? Like I could probably partner with you on buybacks or could refer customers to you. But I mean, we sort of both volunteered for this conversation for the greater good of let's take a risk, let's share some maybe even controversial opinion to try to help educate customers on things they need to look out for in terms of how to warranty and how to repair devices. I'm going to ask you an off the cuff question here, but what are all the different ways that schools try to repair broken teacher student devices right now? There's a few of them.
Yeah, all the way through duct tape, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
any means necessary.
Yeah.
So that it can be, self-repair, say
Right.
self-maintainer, whether or not it's
Right.
a self-maintainer program through a manufacturer warranty where they're doing
Hmm.
their own repairs, whether it's a self insurance plan, which we'll get into later, I'm sure.
Hmm.
Outsourcing that repair,
Hmm.
um, having building techs do it, having student tech teams do it.
Hmm.
There's no lack of ingenuity when it comes to repairing these devices and keeping them in the hands of students.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's I saw the statistic, and maybe will have something different, but when we used to run these sort of, I wouldn't say they were like true insurance actuary kinds of numbers, but some districts had an average of 5 to 6% breakage per year. Some districts had into the double digit percentages. I think when we were running a pretty big Chromebook reseller organization, we saw at least an average nationally of about 8% device breakage per year. Do you guys see similar numbers, more or less? I'm curious.
Yeah. Yeah, 8% and then enter COVID, right? So
Yeah,
that was
right.
a absolute
Which
game
spiked
changer.
it out.
So yeah,
Yeah.
what we talked to our underwriter about, the number we use for iPads in particular is typically in the 8% range.
Okay.
Once you get in the 12% range, it's actually pretty high for an iPad. Um,
Hmm.
Chromebook wise, we hear anything from, hey, we've got a 10% break rate, which usually I don't buy, all the way through,
Hmm. Hmm.
100% break rate year over year,
Hmm.
which
Hmm.
is absolutely insane. So we typically try to stick to those numbers of around the 20% range.
Yeah.
20-25% is where we kind of guess. We ask a lot of questions on the front end.
And that's over multiple years because you're not saying
No,
it's 2020.
that's per year.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I've heard of numbers those that high. I've heard of numbers that high. But it's been more the exception than the rule. I've heard more probably single digit numbers. But again, it just depends on the customer, depends on the demographic, depends on
Yeah.
what do they consider a break, right? Because a lot of times schools, like you said, are doing some quick and easy repairs themselves. So then that doesn't get pushed up to the numbers. But either
Yeah.
way, like you said, COVID impacted this quite a bit, right? It's like all of a sudden students were taking home devices that had always kind of lived in the safe charging storage facility of the schools, right? So numbers have probably
Yeah.
definitely gone up from what you're saying, right?
Yeah, it was shotgun approach. Everybody's got to get a device home as fast as possible. If they were in an environment where it was a carded situation, maybe their reseller didn't recommend that they had cases,
Hmm.
which was totally fine pre-COVID, right?
Hmm.
But then, you start ripping those, you're ripping out the charging carts or the cables from the charging carts and send them home with the students. They're not cased. Now, I think that the statistics show, don't quote me on this because I don't actually have the statistics but the
Hmm.
devices are breaking at home. Devices aren't breaking at school for the most part.
Hmm.
If all devices stayed at school all the time, you know, the device break rate would be much lower. However, that's not the agenda, right? That's not
Right.
what the one-to-one is the purpose of it.
Yeah.
But another thing real quick, Charlie, what I'll say
Yeah.
about the numbers, the actual break rate numbers, the software platforms now that have the capability to track this information that didn't exist. It was out there pre-COVID,
Hmm.
but now it's a standard. The incident IQs, the managed one-to-ones, the one-to-one managers, the one-to-one pluses.
Hmm.
Everyone is moving toward those type of solutions where you can actually figure out what your break rate is and best practices for that device and check out the empirical evidence in your district and use that to guide decision making, which is
Yeah.
really exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and that kind of data is obviously so valuable for schools. And then, so long as you don't run into another issue altogether, which is there is still occasionally, and I've seen this across every manufacturer, nobody's immune to the occasional manufacturer defect, right? Where all
Yeah.
of a sudden the keyboard cable is slightly too long and it's
Mm-hmm.
causing electrical issues and whatever else. So there's, and oftentimes those do manifest within the first year, so it's not necessarily going to be a 3 or 4 or 5 year issue, but boy, that can really throw the numbers, right? Which is
Yeah.
probably why some of those numbers are higher than I'm thinking, because you have to account for occasionally there's just a bad run of manufactured product, in Chromebook
Yep.
especially. Um,
And
so
and
those
I will
numbers
say when
increase.
we ask a school district what their break rate is, I don't think they're separating out the manufacturer's warranties or the battery issues or the
Mm,
accidental damage. They're lumping it all together.
okay.
It's all one number to them. So I think that's a fair point.
Okay. Yeah. So this is our topic. Obviously, our topic is broken devices, and if I can put it in context, there are schools that they don't talk to us vendors about this issue. They self repair, or they only call a vendor like yourselves when they need a repair, and they really just sort of say we're going to manage this
Yeah.
all on our own. And then there's a number of folks who say no, 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 we want some sort of insurance or some sort of warranty. And that's where you and I started a conversation again recently, because I went online and said there's and it's funny because I just said the name of one company that was popular in the last couple of years, but I can name about a half a dozen companies that have gone the way of the dinosaurs similar to
Yeah.
this. So, and it's the Stay Mobile story, and I don't necessarily want to rehash that whole story, but it was a third party repair organization that didn't have a manufacturer warranty behind it and didn't have an insurance company behind it. And they grew like wildfire because they were offering a really low cost warranty option, and even were supported by some of the big manufacturers, and Inc. 5,000 fastest growing company list, I think, in 2019, and filed for bankruptcy in 2022, right? And
Yeah.
one question I sort of want to ask you, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, but when you've looked at would we offer a third party not underwritten warranty altogether, you've looked at the long-term ramification, like what gets complicated if and there's a number of vendors that just now continue to do this despite us all kind of knowing in this industry it's a risk. What are some of the challenges when you start to really grow a third party repair organization with nothing underwritten, right? What are some of the issues you run into?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you the easy thing to do is get a six-figure check from a school district and say, hey,
Right.
I don't need an insurance company.
Right.
I've got money. We can make interest off of this. We can forecast the parts. We can make sure we're keeping our labor low. That's
Right.
a that's what you see. That's why
Right.
all these companies are going the way of the dinosaur, because they're taking on the risk 100%. And I hear it time and time again, from these warranty companies that say, "Well, our books are so strong, we'll open them up, we'll show them to you." It's like, well, at the end of the day, you've got either private equity or venture capitalist backing you, and they start to see those books go south. They're out the door as fast as they
Right.
can get out the door. So
Right.
when my business partner Chris Hawkins and I first started this, one of the most important things to us was making sure that we were selling an ADP plan that was underwritten by an insurance company.
Mhm.
That's actually one of the reasons why we're called Secured Tech Solutions, because
Yeah.
everything we did, we wanted to make sure was secured on the back end. So
Yeah. Yeah.
we partner with a great insurance company. So every ADP plan, every parent opt-in ADP plan that comes through our door, we immediately cut a check to the insurance company
Hmm.
and say, hey,
Hmm.
you guys are backing us on this. Now, granted, we have conversations with the insurance company all the way through. It's a relationship we've had for years. So they're aware of the risks, they're aware of the rewards, and we all share in that together.
Yeah. And for you guys, like you said, you get that check, that six-figure check, or maybe even larger sometimes. And it's got to, at some point, it had to be a temptation to say, I think we could just do this ourselves. Because with you guys, with your model, you are sourcing a lot of your own parts already. So if it's not a manufacturer underwritten warranty, it's an insurance underwritten warranty. You're doing a lot of hard work already in order to source parts, right? But there was a line that you didn't want to cross in your head. And just talk to me a little bit more about that, where we said, no, we're going to give someone else money to take on the liability. Why was that worth it to you?
Sure. No, when you see that check come in and you do start to think and you start to do math and
Yeah.
but really quickly you start to figure out what the break rate is. And
Right. Right.
sometimes on iPads, if it's an 8% break rate, maybe it makes sense to self-insure it. But at the end of the
Right.
day, it comes down to an integrity play that we're saying, we're stating it, we're practicing what we preach, and every
Right.
plan we do is getting underwritten.
Right. Yeah. And it's interesting because if you were a brand new company, it would be such a temptation to say, wow, I get 100% immediate margin
Yeah.
and profit when I take this on. And I can use this to hire technicians. I can use this to build better repair facilities. I can use this to even stock up on parts. But it's interesting because there's no way you would take all that money and put it into building a repair sustainable system. So you're left with some profit at the end of the year, and every company knows that that's a juggle how much profit you want to report at the end of the year because you pay
Yeah.
taxes on your profit. So what?
Yep.
And part of the State Mobile story, which I guess I'm dipping into parts of that story that I do like to share with people, is because they had huge repair facilities and they had huge repair staffs. And when they went under, not only did they have thousands of schools' devices in house that I don't really know what happened to many of those devices. I know many schools struggled to or just didn't get that technology back, but they had over $5 million in inventory of parts, right? So talk about somebody that you feel like would be just set up to handle the dynamic
Yeah.
situation here. But it seems like, and again, I kind of keep going back to, if you didn't do it the way that we want people to do it. What it seems like every year it becomes more expensive and more complicated if you are a self-repair, not underwritten solution. And for you guys, was that part of the consideration too, just the long-term sustainability of doing this?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Okay.
For sure.
And
And
what happens year three, year four? Do the breakage rates increase, or they just kind of stay the same throughout?
breakage rates are typically increasing, as the
Okay.
hinges get older. Things like
Right.
that start to happen. So if you're seeing a 10% break rate year one, not definitely not evidence or perfect evidence of this, but I would say it's going to increase 2 to 5% a year
Hmm.
over year.
Hmm.
Um, so
So you have enough money year one to support the solution, right? Because you got that money. You try to spend that money so you don't have to pay taxes and the profits. So year two, year three, year four, five, you have to basically keep making more money to keep supporting last year's. Like there's a
it,
name for that, isn't there?
when I saw your posts on LinkedIn, it struck a chord because Chris and I talk about that all the time.
Hmm.
You saw these third-party warranty providers, maybe they started out at $89.99, and then all of a
Hmm.
sudden you could buy this plan 3 years later for $50, and you're like, well,
Hmm.
I'm watching the parts market. I'm watching, the entire market. Inflation's at 9%. It's like, okay, well,
Right.
clearly they're dropping their prices because they have to have cash in the door to
Right.
support what they've already done. And this $50 plan, this is tomorrow's business. We're not worried
Right.
about that right now.
Right. So the
So
bigger you get, the more devices you repair, the more the next year financial burden, the more you have to continue to bring in more money. And so what happens if the market fluctuates? And I think what was the end of a number of different companies was there was kind of a different market fluctuation because a lot of them rely on the ability to buy stuff out of the market as it's coming off the shelves, right? So schools retire their old fleet,
hmm
and I'm sure you guys probably buy some of that equipment too, right? To get
yep.
parts and lower cost. So what happened during COVID that made that not a sustainable system?
Yeah, it was the fact that every student all of a sudden needed a device. The school districts who didn't have one-to-one, who didn't have a one-to-one plan, um, these are commodities, and it's supply and demand based. So if on when April 2020, let's just say you didn't have a device in your student's hand, I'm willing to go out and pay you $150 for that used Chromebook,
Right.
whereas a parts company might be willing to pay $50 for that used Chromebook. So guess what? 150 takes the cake. So now all of a sudden
Right.
you're removing all of those devices out of inventory across the country. Every
Mm-hmm.
single device is now accounted for that's usable, which is great, is going directly into the student's hands for the one-to-one learning, for the at-home learning. And now the parts manufacturers aren't able to find those parts any longer.
Yeah, so as your third party repair option, not underwritten, is supported by increased growth every year. There's a vulnerable point, and it's supported by a secondary Chromebook market, and that's a big vulnerable point, right? If you don't have somebody that's sending you the part or sending you enough money to buy a viable part, then those two, then it becomes a big risk. It feels like so.
Yep.
Um, Now, again, this is what's so fun is in this conversation. There's a lot of things we agree on. And I don't know that we disagree terribly on how to cover the devices, but we would do it differently, right? I wouldn't try to do what you guys are doing, at least not today. I would probably buy a manufacturer warranty by one of the Dell, HP, Lenovo, Acer, Asus, billion-dollar companies, and then they provide a labor cost, often shipping consideration, right? Sometimes if the school's sending direct to them, there's a shipping cost covered too, and they provide a part. So there's one way to do it where little old Advent Tech or insert any other reseller here is not the one ultimately responsible for the repair, and therefore you can go to any other authorized service provider, a customer, and become their own self-maintainer. And if you don't want to fix them and a partner doesn't want to fix them, then the manufacturer will fix the devices, right? So that's probably the model that I'm most familiar with, and matches the philosophy, I suppose, of me not wanting to gamble with the customer's money or devices. Now you guys go a different route, and I just want you to talk about now the insurance route and how that works as an alternative.
Sure. Yeah. So our model is a little bit of a blend between an actual insurance program and a third party warranty. So ours is an underwritten ADP plan, ADP standing for accidental damage protection.
Mhm.
So I mentioned earlier, so how it works is, we give the school district the price, they pay that price. The first thing we do, we receive that check, we cut a check to the insurance company. Insurance company now sends us an insurance binder saying that Secured Tech Solutions is insured for X amount of money on this policy. And we'll just say Advent Tech. Advent Tech is the secondary on this policy. And what that means from our customer's perspective
And
is
Advent Tech would be the customer or the school, you're saying?
the school. Yes, in this
Yeah.
scenario, Advent Tech would be the school, exactly. Um, God forbid, Secure Tech Solutions, we go out of business, we become
Hmm.
insolvent. We're unable to continue doing business.
Hmm.
The school district's able to file the claim or the repair claim directly with our insurance company.
Hmm.
And then the way
Hmm.
that works is the insurance company would then either, give the finances to the school district for doing their own repairs. They would talk to the school district and say, hey, who would you prefer to do your repairs? We'll give me the name. We'll work with that repair company to make sure you guys are up and running. And then, one more to your point, as far as the manufacturer parts and warranty goes. Yes, those are coming back. Those parts are almost guaranteed to be available. I've heard stories where the manufacturers aren't even able to support the parts, in a timely manner as well. But let's say that one of the school district's devices continues to not work, or weren't unable to get a part, or unable to get it repaired within a 6-week time frame. Then we would give them either a like device. So if they have a Dell 3100, maybe we give them an HPG 9, for example, or another Dell 3100 that we have sitting around if those parts aren't compatible for some reason. Or we will cut them a check for the replacement value of the device. One important aspect to our underwritten plan is when we cut that check to the insurance company, we're telling them what the replacement value is of that device. So
Right.
let's use an iPad, for example. An iPad is an iPad. It's $294. That's what it is. So we are getting that device insured for $294. So year 1, 2, 3, or 4, that device is insured for $294, no matter
Right.
what.
Right.
Just like car insurance, if you have a car and your car is worth $10,000, you're going to
Mhm.
want that full replacement value of your car year over year.
Mhm. Yeah, and again, it's so interesting because what you're talking about is, insurance actuary tables and doing math and the full value of the device and all this stuff. And there's a whole logic that goes behind, you know, warranty coverage where it doesn't hurt you as a business if devices get broken and they need to be repaired or replaced, right? Because long term, you get paid to repair and you get paid for parts or you get paid for full replacements. If in an alternative scenario, where you're not underwriting the warranties and you're fixing devices, all those pieces are just true cost to the company, right? So
Yep.
suddenly the company is taking a loss versus actually taking a gain, and you're paying repair technicians and you're paying staff and you're getting money to do this work. So, and again, I don't think people understand like the mental impact on the organization as those things move forward into a bigger, like you said, you've been around for 5 years. The bigger the load is of your insurance policy, the better for Secure Tech Solutions. For somebody offering a third party warranty, the more devices they cover and repair, the bigger the expenses, the more overhead, the more everything that they have to pay out of pocket out of next year's money. And I don't think people quite understand that it just gets to this point where most business owners or most private equity companies start to say, this is too expensive, right? Like
Yeah.
we don't like the way this is leaning. For us, this has just become like a major drag, a major cost. Whoever got paid on these units years ago, well, we're not those owners. We're not those people anymore, right? Because often a lot of
Yeah.
times these companies will get acquired and change hands a number of times too. So
To go a little bit deeper into what you were talking about with regards, you were referencing risk pool. So, as we sell more insurance plans, and let's say we've got 250,000 devices under coverage, for example. Now if one school district has a 50% break rate and another school district has a 5% break rate, that's mitigated.
mhm,
Everyone's going to kind of fall within this range, but we got to spread out that risk pool. The other
mhm,
thing to note that's kind of interesting about insurance companies is everyone, even our insurance company, there's a reinsurance. So they have a stop loss. And then there's another stop loss from that insurance company. And then all the insurance risk kind of gets pushed down the road,
mm.
basically to like Lloyd's of London. They're
Yeah,
taking all the risk across the entire country for
yeah.
every insurance policy that there is. But everyone's taken a little piece of the risk pie all the way through until it gets to that. So we're just the face, the repair piece, the
hmm
customer service piece,
hmm
the assurance piece.
Well, and it's interesting. It's interesting when you think about that and you realize that because that means behind you guys, there are several, billion-dollar insurance companies, and they may be kind of stacked up in a row, taking various levels of liability. But it's like,
Sure.
for your customer's insurance policy to fail, you'd have to have a failure at a really high level. And again, this is so similar to why philosophically the manufacturer warranty or the insurance warranty make the most sense to us because Lenovo is a multi-billion-dollar company, right? And it's not little old me. Let's say little old me is $100 million technology company here down the road. Well, if I get in a car accident, my wife's going to sell the company. If if the market has another COVID type shift, and I've done a ton of third party warranties, I have hundreds of thousands of devices under warranty, and I can no longer source inexpensive parts. It doesn't pencil out financially, right? Are we going to take
Absolutely.
$1 million, $5 million loss that year? Can we even afford that? I mean, you wipe out your
Yeah.
credit lines. So again, I don't want to point the finger at salespeople who work for these companies, because again, I've worked with many people who now have these programs.
Yeah.
It's really an owner level decision, right? And you and I are business owners, and I mean, there are probably salespeople who are going to watch this video and say, "Well, geez, I'm told to sell these warranties." And but to other business owners, I mean, I think that's who we are preaching to a little bit here, to say, make a more conscientious decision on behalf of your customer. For your part and for your team that's out there, selling these warranties, how do you share this with somebody who says, well, I'm just buying from so and so that does their own warranty? Like, what would be your pitch to say, think about secured tech solutions for this reason?
Yeah. I usually say, have you heard the story of XYZ company
Yeah.
going out of business?
Right.
And
Right.
that's we say that a lot.
Right.
And just say, well, what happens if they go out of business and they're unable
Right.
to get it? And then that's when you hear that, well, they assured us that they've got plenty of money and we can look at their financial statements and all of this. So a lot of times what we do is we come in and we consult with the school.
Mm-hmm.
We look at what we do from a consultative perspective. It's not a sales perspective. A lot of times we'll sit down with the school district and they'll tell us what they're going to do. And Chris and I will look at them and say, why? Like let's back up a little bit. You've got 4,000 devices that are sitting here that they don't expire until 2029. Maybe buy 1,000. Don't do a full 4,000 refresh. Use
Mm-hmm.
those as spares, because maybe we're going to pay you 10, 15, $20 per on those devices. Those are worth more to you than they are to us or anyone else out there. So let's keep those in the hands of students. Let's consider pushing those out another year. And let's see where we can save some money for you guys.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the approach we like to take.
Yeah. And if somebody is, trying to save money, right? Because unfortunately, a lot of these plans, they do end up costing less money up front. Um, you know, I mean, do you guys have options from your company perspective for just repair only programs, right? If somebody says, I
Yeah.
don't want to buy a whole insurance package, but somebody could have some devices insured and some devices they just pay for repairs, I'm guessing.
Yep. Absolutely.
Okay.
So we have several different repair options. We have just ad hoc repair. So if you don't want a contract, if you just want to
Mm-hmm.
pay as they break, we'll fix them.
Mm-hmm.
Invoice per repair, we do that. We have a parent opt-in ADP plan where the school district pushes out the information to the parents. They come to our website, they purchase the ADP plan,
Mm-hmm.
and then we cover that for them. So then all those repairs come to us, we fix it, we send it back to the school.
Yeah.
Then we
Yeah.
have our multi-year ADP plan. So 1, 2, 3, or 4 years
Yeah.
on iPads, Chromebooks, Windows, MacBooks, just
Yeah. Nice.
a typical ADP plan.
Yeah.
And then we also kind of do a blended of the parent opt-in and the 4-year ADP plan. So one thing that's happened with the kind of the COVID cliff is, school districts not having enough money for a refresh. They got all this ESSER funds, all these other federal funds that they were able to spend this money on 4 years ago, but they didn't have it planned in the budget, to do a full refresh. So now they've got these older devices and there's the normalcy of having these devices, and you can't take those away at this point. That's a hard take back, right? So we have the opportunity to we can sell them a 4-year ADP plan, and then we give them the option to open up a parent opt-in ADP plan each year in order to offset their total expenditure of the 4 years. So
And
that's
those are
for school
all, and
districts.
they're all still underwritten plans, right? It's like whether the parents paying for
Yep.
them or the school district's paying for them, they're all still underwritten.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. No, that's great. I mean, I
Yeah.
think what's, exciting for me in this conversation, even though there are a number of companies that will really philosophically disagree, and they'll say, no, we're a safe company. We offer safe warranties.
Yeah.
Look at our inventory of parts. Look at our financials. For me, a part of our philosophy is we educate, we sell tech, and I'm not trying to tell IT directors that are trying to save money on warranties that they're doing something wrong. I actually think that this really comes back to the companies that provide these programs, because they don't often provide the upfront risks and concerns. And for me, this conversation just represents getting a much broader perspective on these issues and saying there are other options. You don't just have to self repair. You don't have to just buy a manufacturer warranty, although that would be what I would try to sell you. There's also an insurance option that does have some of these flexibility points that you're talking about, right? I think because some people maybe want to work with a manufacturer warranty, but manufacturer warranties are sort of out of necessity, a little more rigid, a little more restrictive. There's many people that don't authorize to be self-maintainers. It's hard to manage a manufacturer warranty sometimes with a parent opt-in solution. It's not impossible, but so I think I'm excited for people to be able to watch this video and say, okay, there are actually some really interesting options that I'm not going to get fired for,
Yeah.
or that I'm not going to feel like I'm taking a risk with my, business. And by the way, anybody today, and I'm not trying to create a blueprint for our competitors, but anybody today that's doing the third party warranty thing we disagree with could even do what you're doing and say, we're going to keep doing the repairs, we're going to keep sourcing the parts, but we are going to underwrite them with insurance for the sake of our customers' peace of mind and overall security, right? I mean, anybody could really go down that path if they wanted to.
Yeah, you have to find an insurance company who's willing to take on the
Yeah,
risk. So
right.
there's very few out there that are willing to take on the risk of the one-to-one device programs.
I see.
There are a few out there,
Yeah.
but not easy to come by.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and alternatively, if so they can do the homework to do what you've done, and you did it, so it can be done. Or they can go back to, hey, we'll sell you a X warranty, but we are going to underwrite this by the manufacturer, right? So whether you find that insurance agency and build that relationship, or you build it with the manufacturer, either way, you're not taking a risk with your customers' money, with your customers' devices at that point, right? Because if
Yep.
if your company goes up in smoke, your customers, Secure Tech Solutions customers, have someone they fall back on. Like you said, their name is on the insurance policy. They call the insurance company and say, "Hey, we're Charlie County Schools, and we've got some devices need repair. So you've got to find us a
Yep.
new repair partner. Here's some folks we've worked with, or you got to replace our devices, right?" So they have somewhere to go, which is great.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier about who they're buying from, and I think at the
Mm-hmm.
end of the day, school districts buy from people they trust.
Yeah.
How difficult is it to get a new relationship with the school district because they've had the same sales reps over and over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
Sales rep A, Jimmy leaves, one company, he goes to another repair warranty company, and they trust Jimmy. At the end of the
Mm-hmm.
day, that's who they trust. That's who they buy from. Jimmy's
Mm-hmm.
always taking great care of them.
Mm-hmm.
That's who they're going to buy from, regardless of if it's underwritten, not underwritten. And Jimmy might not know that his program's not underwritten. His job is to go out and make the sale, to make the customer happy, and maybe he's the face of that. But the CIOs, the tech directors out there, they really need to be asking the questions like, are you getting this underwritten on the back end, or what is the risk if you guys go out of business? What happens next if you can't source parts? Then what? They have to ask the questions.
Yeah, I mean, I think whether you're inside a company and you're thinking, boy, this really isn't a risk for my customer, or you are the customer who ultimately has the loudest voice with any company, right? Because you're spending your dollars. Your dollars are your voice. So, hey guys, we don't want to take this risk anymore. You find a way to mitigate this risk for us, right? Because we don't want to be in a scenario where a year down the road somebody gets sick and you have to make a hard decision about the ownership of the company, or supply and demand issues create an unreasonable cost to repair that falls on you in a future scenario where you can't get product, you can't get enough sales to cover it. So yeah, the customer has a ton of power here, right? And even if somebody is normally doing third-party warranties, all the time, and that's their preference. The customer can say, I want you to sell me a manufacturer warranty. There's nothing stopping them from doing that right now, too. A little more work to do an insurance policy, right? I mean, I shouldn't say a little bit more work, a lot more work. You built a whole
Yeah.
relationship, but
Yeah.
either way, you're going to make sure that the customer is not going to end up in a bad situation down the road. So
That's
um,
the whole point. Yeah. That's what we're
that
here
is the
for.
whole point, right? It's
Yeah.
like you said, why you named the company Secured Tech Solutions is because they go to you because they trust you, and because they want protection for their devices. So I will say this, and again, I'm kind of saying this. It's really up to company owners and private equity companies to make these kinds of decisions. But if you have been in this industry long enough, you have heard these stories. And I do want to say, to our competitors who are out there, that will probably be a lot of the people who listen to this, many of you know of companies that were doing great and raking in millions of dollars and very profitable, and then they went under. And I think there is something there in terms of a word you used a little earlier, which is integrity, right? Where at least you should have a conversation with your customer about the risk, right? And this is where, again, I suppose I'm appealing to salespeople here, because salespeople will inform customers, and there's a lot of trust there with that salesperson. Make this a conversation, even if they land on, we still trust you, the company's good, third party warranty. I just think, all you're going to do is gain more trust from your customer when you say, I want you to understand, I'm offering you a less expensive warranty, but there are some risks associated, right? It's like, if you
Yep.
were to admit that to a customer, I think you only gain trust with that customer. So
Yep. Absolutely.
now others like us, we've been that sales rep. We've been in those situations, and now that we're company owners, we say, I'm going to make that decision for my sales reps, right?
Yeah.
So we're not even going to make that an option anymore.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. And
Yeah.
at the end of the day, one thing we've done at our company this year, we've restructured some things on our sales side. So we don't pay out commission anymore. We do team bonus structures, and
Yeah.
it's a team goal. So because our thought process is, we don't want our sales reps trying to sell school districts something that they don't need.
Right.
And, again, we're going in from a consultative standpoint.
Right.
We want the ability for the sales rep to do the right thing all the time, every time, to bring it back to us and say, hey, this school, to collaborate with one another. That's a core value of ours, collaboration. Hey guys, let's talk about this. This school district was going to purchase 4,000 new Chromebooks. I don't think they should. Let's get together. Let's figure out what they should do. Lots of other companies, they're going to sell, they're going to see that 4,000 Chromebooks out the door. Great, fantastic. But, from our mentality, where we see ourselves, 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road, is still with these same customers and building on what we're doing. And that's one reason why we're not paying the commissions anymore. We're doing more of a team bonus and behind that. Several years ago, one of the large players came up to me and said, hey, I hear you guys have an ADP plan, or a third party warranty plan. I don't remember what the terminology was, but his thought process was, he had just heard that a school district had about a 50% break rate. And his initial thought was like, let's get him into an insurance plan or an ADP plan. And, I asked a couple questions. I was like, okay, yeah, let's have a conversation. Let's talk about it. And it's like, well, what's their break rate? He's like, oh, it's not too bad. It's like 50%. And I'm like, well, there's a non-starter for the insurance company, because right now we only sell ADP plans through Secure Tech Solutions. We don't sell them through third-party companies, through resellers. That is coming in the future, but we have to make sure our risk pool is spread out, wide enough in order to justify doing that, because, we're pretty careful with who we're marketing and having the ADP conversations with.
Well, because if you survey, and if you serve a general audience of people that are having issues, like you said, somebody might have 50%, somebody will have 5%, and it'll come out in the wash if you start to offer a third party option to other resellers. Unfortunately, I could see a lot of them coming to you saying, great, I've got somebody for you. So
Absolutely.
I got somebody
Yeah.
that nobody wants to touch anymore, and I want you to warranty them. Now, by the way, that happened with Stay Mobile before they filed for bankruptcy. Is people would bring them their really hard cases and say, these guys have 50% breakage. I remember conversations like this. And again, if they bought manufacturer warranties, the manufacturer was obligated to cover that, right? And what was happening though was somebody was saying, we just want to get them a really good deal. And I just remember State Mobile said, yes, they signed them up. And I said, you're not even going to stop and think about it. You're not like, you're hearing from everyone down the chain of command, from the manufacturer to partners, that they have a huge breakage rate. You're just going to sign them up. And again, a lot of that just had to do with believing that the good times are never going to end, right? The money will just keep coming in every year, and we'll just, that's future company problem. That's future Nate. That's future Charlie problem. Which is unfortunately the way I do think a lot of companies think. Even private equity sometimes, thinks that way. And there's great private equity, there's great venture capitalists that do have a long-term play in mind, but unfortunately, many people aren't there. Many people are just thinking, how do I maximize my revenue and profitability right now, right?
Yep.
Well, Nate, I mean, this has been great. This is sort of, I think your insights in the insurance industry are so interesting, right? Because it's different than my experience. And so just thank you for taking the time to kind of walk through what are you guys doing and why are you doing it, more importantly. And, I think for anybody really looking at all their options now, why do you think that Secure Tech Solutions should be somebody that they look at?
Yeah. Well, first of all, like I mentioned earlier, we're considered a consultant. We come in, we're a partner, we're there for the long term. We have the district's best interest at mind. We are underwriting the plan. We've got an excellent support staff, customer support team. You're going to talk to the same 2 or 3 people every time you call in. Mel's picking up the call. She's picking up the phone and solving your problems every time you're calling.
Nice.
So, we are still a small company relatively. We have customers in roughly 27 states now, but, not market saturation by any means. So know every customer by name, know every district we work in, know what their environment looks like, know what their goals are. But yeah, I just would love the opportunity to continue to work with you, Charlie. I've really enjoyed our conversation and love to keep this up.
Yeah. Thanks. Well, hey, for anybody that did tune in and got this far in the video, thanks for watching. I do hope that we were able to shed some light on the different risks that exist within this industry and then ways to mitigate that risk. And for our part, we just want to share with you what we know, right? Between us, there's probably decades of experience in K-12 technology sales. And, I've got kids in education now, right? I've got kids in elementary school and I got kids in school. Do you have kids in school?
Yep, 3.
So you start to think in terms of what if it was my kid, right? And I think for me, this sort of, responsible ownership decision making that you have pursued, I really respect that. Even though we're skinning this cat 2 different ways, really, we're approaching it differently. We're both still standing back and saying, but wait, there's a way that we don't necessarily agree with, and I'm not trying to point fingers at the folks who have sell those solutions or buy those solutions. I just want you to be informed as much as is possible. So thanks, Nate, so much. Seriously, this was great. Thanks for your insights on the industry and for sharing your honest thoughts. I think it can be hard to do sometimes because we know there are people that will not like, this video.
Yeah, and that's okay.
Yeah. That's
we're
okay.
here for the districts. Yep.
Yeah. I think I'd rather have customers that knew they can really trust me and trust I'll be responsible with their money than have as many, friends as is possible in the market. So I think we got to make that decision when we, underwrite our warranties.